good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
Sheriff, you're not cheating on your wife if you eat my lemon square.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking, how dare you wake me in the middle of the day when you know I have insomnia? We're talking, I never interfered in your dirty sex life. And we're talking Paul Morrissey, and not just Andy Warhol. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace. And Joe, did you know that to know death, you have to fuck life in the gallbladder?
Ah, yes. The mysterious gallbladder of life that this movie seems to think is a thing.
Everyone, we are discussing Flesh for Frankenstein, or Andy Warhol's Frankenstein ? I know. And what a movie it is, Joe.
Oh boy. How funny that we ended up programming two films that come out in the exact same year back to back, but on different sides of the pond, and yet have a very similar kind of wackadoodle vibe to them, right?
It's, yes, very, very strange. I mean, this movie is bananas. I don't even... it's so funny because I read the plot for this movie before I watched it. So I wasn't like... I was spoiled ahead of time. But nothing I read about what happens in this movie could have really prepared me for anything that happens in this movie.
No, like your reptilian brain will just read things and say, oh, sure, I understand. We're talking about incest. We're talking about necrophilia. We're talking about homoerotic undertones. All of this good stuff. And yet when you see it played out in lurid Technicolor 3D with like Udo Kier fucking a corpse lady, you're just like, what am I watching? What am I spending my time doing right now? It's lovely. I love this movie.
I have no fucking clue. But yeah, I mean, for continuing our camp month, everyone, because this film is pretty campy, but there's a lot to discuss here. So why don't we bring in our guest who I know really wants to discuss this film. Everyone, she is the co-host of Windsor Film Club, a cult film podcast that celebrates the underappreciated or just plain weird in the world of film. You may have also read her work at Fangoria, Bloody Disgusting, and The Academy. She was also our guest in our episode on The Silence of the Lambs from last year. Please welcome Reyna Cervantes.
Ooh. Hello. Sorry, I was looking for that mute.
Oh my god, I was like...
She's gone. She's already disappeared. She was like, no, I'm out.
Hello, Reyna. Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you for having me back for a quote-unquote fun episode.
But you know what, though? I would argue that deals with more upsetting, well, maybe not more upsetting, but equally upsetting subject matter.
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, this movie has, like, troubling content. Let's bring Reyna on for it.
Yeah, well, it's so funny, Reyna, because we actually we had this on our schedule when we first did it, but then we were like, oh, fuck, like, it's not streaming anywhere. It's only this goddamn $50 Vinegar Syndrome 4K set. But then Shudder added it, and so we were like, fuck yes, we can reprogram it.
Rescued by Shudder again. Thank you, Shudder.
But Reyna, you talked to me about this, like, before we had even considered, like, programming it. Why? What is your relationship to this film? Because this is bizarre.
It's just a why and a what question, Reyna.
Yeah, this is, I have like a weird, like kind of a half-assed relationship with this movie, in a weird way. So 2020, pandemic hit, we're all stuck at home. You know the story, I'm not going to recap it, but I kind of sat there and I told myself, I was like, well, growing up, I always hated vampire films. Like, I couldn't watch them. And I was like, I am going to get into vampire films if I'm going to force myself. So I was buying any and all vampire films. Trust me, I'm getting to how this relates.
No, go.
So eventually I get to Blood for Dracula, aka Andy Warhol's Dracula. And I was like, oh, cool. They did a Frankenstein movie as well with like the same like crew and whatnot. So I ended up buying bootlegs of those because they were notoriously out of print.
Yep.
and I didn't want to pay for the Criterion DVDs. So I found some guy on Etsy, and I don't remember his name. I think his shop got taken down, but he was basically making copies of the Criterion DVDs and burning them onto Blu-rays with like custom cover art.
Oh, wow.
And I paid $40 for both Blood for Dracula and Flesh for Frankenstein and watched them both back to back and kind of instantly fell in love with them, even though like my copies were of like pretty piss poor quality.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the high camp of it all. Like,
oh boy.
These two movies have like the energy of a Ren and Stimpy episode.
And yet you're not wrong. Not wrong at all.
And it's so funny because, like, we're in our month of camp. We covered Female Trouble last week, which is also an exercise in bad taste. And also, actually, Joe, an X-rated or X or NC-17 rated film, just like this one. So, have we even covered one of those before? We just happened to do 2 in a row.
Yeah, I mean, this was a weird programming thing. Originally, we were going to do next week's film in between, and then just by virtue of scheduling, we opted for this. I actually think that this is a really dynamic pair because it gives us a North American perspective and now a UK Italian perspective.
French Italian.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, Reyna, this movie's bananas. Like, what?
That's putting it lightly.
Okay. Well, why don't we jump into this, because there is a lot of stuff about this film, but I wanted to really quickly, before we jump into the actual production of this film, talk about Andy Warhol, because I don't know. Do y'all have a relationship with Andy Warhol? Because I definitely do not.
I think my closest relationship with Andy Warhol is Bill Hader playing him in Men in Black 3. That's about it.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, to say I have a relationship with him is taking it too far, but I worked at an art design institution for a number of years, and as a result, I saw the influence of him and his art and his crew. Yeah, like, it's long-standing, but also I think that he shifted from, like, an art figure into somebody that was casually associated with, like, Studio 54 and the drug scene. He popularized a lot of things. Like, he basically made independent art mainstream for celebrity figures, and I think that that's a really interesting piece, but also, in a certain way, he commodified a lot of art, so he kind of ended up packaging and selling things. So some people regard him as like the death of art.
Or he's just the influencer before that was even a household term.
Right. Andy Warhol on social media would have been a fucking nightmare.
Oh my god. Yeah, he had like the very first like hype house where it's just like a house of influencers.
Well, okay, so we'll get into this. But I will tell you, so I really didn't know who Andy Warhol was. I mean, I'd heard his name, whatever, but my freshman year of college, my boyfriend at the time was obsessed with the Sienna Miller starring movie The Factory, in which she plays Edie Sedgwick.
Right. Mm-hmm. Not a good movie.
No. And he kept trying to get me to watch it, and I finally did, and I was bored to tears. I hated it. And I had no context. I didn't know what The Factory was, and honestly, I couldn't tell you what it is. But nevertheless, everyone, if you are like me and you don't know much about Andy Warhol, he was an American artist, film director, and producer who was a leading figure in the visual art movement known as pop art. And his works explore the relationship between artistic expression, advertising, and celebrity culture that flourished by the 1960s and span a variety of media, including painting, silk screening, photography, film, and sculpture. He did live as an openly gay man before the gay liberation movement that began in the late 1960s was even a thing.
Sure, he was an artist.
Yes, he was. So, after exhibiting his work in several galleries in the late 1950s, he began to receive recognition as an influential and controversial artist, and his New York studio, which Reyna was talking about, The Factory, became a well-known gathering place. It became famed for its parties in the 1960s, and it was completely covered in silver, even the elevator. So, why silver, you ask? Well, silver, fractured mirrors, and tinfoil were apparently the basic decorating materials loved by early amphetamine users of the 60s.
Oh my god. Wait, does that explain certain things about the decor in Female Trouble in retrospect then?
It might!
They fully redecked Dawn's apartment in like silvery and red. Anyway, moving on.
Yep, go back and listen, everyone, because that was also a trip. So not super relevant, but there was a now iconic red sofa that became a favorite place for factory guests to crash on overnight, usually after coming down from said amphetamines. So if you ever see photographs of Warhol's factory, it's featured in many photographs and films from his era, including his silent 1963 documentary Blowjob and his 1964 pornographic film Couch, which makes sense. By the time Warhol had achieved a reputation, he was working day and night on his paintings. He used silk screens so that he could mass-produce images the way corporations mass-produce consumer goods. So, to increase production, he attracted a menage of adult film performers, drag queens, socialites, drug addicts, musicians, intellectuals, playwrights, bohemian street people, Hollywood celebrities, wealthy patrons, and free thinkers who became known as the Warhol superstars. And these superstars helped him create his paintings, starred in his films, and created the atmosphere for which the factory became legendary.
Yeah. So basically a high-class John Waters and the Dreamers.
Yes! I mean, yes. Well, hey, I don't even know if they were high class. They just thought they were high class.
Yeah, it was everybody rejected by basically normal society.
Right.
Yeah, it was very much it's popular. Ugh, that's not cool. That's the vibe I get, but I'm not going to say any more because we might have a lot of Warhol heads listening. I don't know.
Sure. Let us know.
This brings us to Flesh for Frankenstein. So I'm going to go all the way to the beginning of this, y'all, because, hoo boy, we've got a timeline on our hands. We're going to start with producer Andrew Braunsberg, and in 1971, he was working with Roman Polanski on his film Macbeth. Macbeth used the Todd A.O. lens system and cameras, and so during filming, Todd A.O. sent their chief engineer to the set, who introduced Braunsberg to a new system they had built for shooting in 3D, and this system required only a single camera and a standard projector in place of the 2 cameras and 2 projectors necessitated by the older 3D techniques that I think we were seeing in the 1950s a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Braunsberg was absolutely hypnotized by it, so he told Polanski he wanted to make 3D parody versions of Frankenstein and Dracula, the latter of which would become 1974's Blood for Dracula, which featured many of the same cast and crew as Flesh for Frankenstein. Polanski eventually lost interest, and while both he and Braunsberg went on to make another project, which would be 1972's What, Braunsberg was still determined to make a 3D film. After doing some research, he was told he would need a director who does long takes. I guess working with this technology, you couldn't have too many cuts because it was going to complicate matters, I guess.
Yeah.
This brought him to Paul Morrissey, who at the time was a member of Andy Warhol's factory and, one of his superstars. Paul Morrissey, this guy. Right. He had formerly served in the United States Army and is a staunch political conservative and self-described right-winger who has publicly protested against immorality and anti-Catholicism. And so this is interesting, right? Because we as queer people know that we are called immoral quite often. So why is he teaming up with Andy Warhol?
I think he's a little confused.
Well, so his long-term collaboration with Warhol was viewed by many as a successful mismatch, although both men did share some traits, like they were both practicing Catholics from ethnic backgrounds. But I do want to point out that while Morrissey was super right-wing, he was still among the first film directors to cast a transgender woman from Warhol's inner circle in his films Trash from 1970 and Women in Revolt from 1971.
Actually, a little bit similar in the same way that Dario Argento was kind of comfortable in moving into queer spaces without imposing judgment or stigma onto his queer performers.
Yeah. So Morrissey's early works with Warhol took advantage of 16mm news cameras such as the Auricon, which recorded sound directly on film. Now, this would kind of become a problem later when we get to Flesh for Frankenstein, because as we all know, the Italians like to dub.
Just a little.
These cameras had the capacity to film takes up to 33 minutes in length, and so this permitted a portable small crew method of filming and was amenable to improvisation, which is how Morrissey preferred to do his films. And it was that experience with the improv and the 33-minute takes that put Morrissey on Braunsberg's radar. At the time, Morrissey was a really hot commodity because of his association with Andy Warhol. And Joe, I don't know why this name keeps coming back up, but they were going to make a Sherlock Holmes movie that had been written by the horrible, atrocious film critic Rex Reed.
Oh, Jesus God.
And it was going to star Rex Reed as Sherlock Holmes.
I mean, I've seen Rex Reed act, and he's not terrible. He's maybe on par with some of the acting that we'll see in this film, but yeah, dude needs to fucking go away.
go away forever. But nevertheless, that movie did not happen. It would eventually morph into what Morrissey's 1977 film, The Hound of the Baskervilles, but it had Dudley Moore instead of Rex Reed. So at least we have that going for it.
Much better choice.
Well, he was also, Joe, he was a top choice to direct the adaptation of Cruising in the early 70s. But if you listen to our 100th episode on that film, you know that, of course, did not come to fruition.
Right.
Anyway, Bronsberg called Morrissey and told him he wanted to make Frankenstein in 3D, and Morrissey said yes immediately, as long as he could both write and direct it. But the problem is, now we gotta get financing for this thing. Despite Andy Warhol's name over the film's title, no money actually came from Andy Warhol. He just slapped his name on the fucker for brand recognition and called it a day, because he also didn't put any, he had no say on the production of this film either. Like, he was not involved. He came to set one day during filming, and he visited the editing room once during the editing process.
Capitalism. Love it.
It's just, I mean, I don't even think he's listed as a producer on this film, is he?
No, I don't believe he is.
Yeah, it basically, it's exactly what you said. He got used for marketing to help sell the film, and I'm sure he made some kind of money off of that, or else he wouldn't have done it. But yeah, like, he has no signature or fingerprints on this film.
Well, the chief person who got things moving was Italian producer Carlo Ponti, and he teamed up with a French producer named Jean-Pierre Rassam, making Flesh for Frankenstein a French-Italian co-production. So, filming began on March 20th, 1973, and the story told is that Morrissey, because he wanted to do improvisation, he was writing the script in the car on his way to the studio every morning. And he had to do this because he didn't plan a script in advance, but he was told, hey, you can't do improv for this because some of your actors, namely Udo Kier, do not do improv. So Morrissey was staying in Ponti's villa during filming because he had offered it up, and he stayed there with his assistant Jed Johnson, who served as a co-editor on the film, and a woman named Pat Hackett. Now, Pat Hackett seems to be the Deborah Hill to Morrissey's John Carpenter, or more appropriately, the Daria Nicolodi to Morrissey's Dario Argento.
There we go.
Because she supposedly had more input in the script than is commonly said. You see, Hackett was Andy Warhol's best friend and confidant. So she helped compile and was the sole editor of the Andy Warhol Diaries, aka Warhol's dictated memoirs from 1989 that were published as an 800-page book shortly after his death. But it was her work that primarily made up those diaries, because basically while they were friends, while he was alive, she would call him every morning and write down Andy Warhol's words, and she'd be the sole keeper of those tapes. And it is those tapes that became the Andy Warhol Diaries.
Oh, okay.
I know. Somehow she's only credited on Warhol's final film, 1977's Bad, but it is often widely believed that she added many lines of dialogue to films like Flesh for Frankenstein.
So she was the Andy Warhol touch and everything.
Yeah, kind of. Like, by proxy, right?
Like, he, like, let her take care of everything.
I guess.
Like, in a weird way.
I wonder, like, did he just not care about this movie, or did he think it was beneath him, or was he just too busy, or was he just on too many drugs?
He was just vibing. They probably just asked him one night at a party, and he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever," and then signed off on it.
Yeah, slap my name on it.
Other than that, though, shooting went faultlessly. It was on time, on budget, but Morrissey got super annoyed with the 3D because he went up to Bromsberg and he was like, hey, full disclosure, I can't see very well out of one of my eyes, so I'm having a lot of trouble with the 3D. Can we please not make Blood for Dracula in 3D? And Bromsberg sadly obliged, because this 3D gives the red and blue, whatever, screen. If you only have one eye working, you will not be able to actually see the 3D process.
Right? Well, yeah, because even like polarized 3D, it's just two images overlapping.
Yep. We've also, weirdly enough, got a Tobe Hooper, Steven Spielberg poltergeist situation here, because some Italian prints credit the second unit director, Antonio Margheriti, as the director of the film under his pseudonym Anthony M. Dawson. And this was actually to ensure that the film would obtain Italian nationality for the producers due to Italian laws.
Huh.
But
okay.
Because of that, though, there are rumors that's like, oh yeah, this guy directed the film, Morrissey didn't do shit.
Oh, Jesus.
Margheriti did shoot some of the special effects scenes, namely the one involving the breathing lungs.
Oh, those are fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a word for it. Anyway, filming was completed by the summer of 73, and Morrissey spent the summer editing. But now we've got to distribute this fucker. So, Bronsberg showed Flesh for Frankenstein to distributors, and everybody turned it down. No one wanted to pay money to distribute this film. He eventually found Joseph E. Levine in the United States, who at the time was considered the king of exploitation, though he had already produced films like The Graduate and The Producers in the late 60s, so he wasn't just exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
They arranged a screening in New York, and after about 5 to 10 minutes, Levine shouted from the back, "Switch off this crap, I'm getting out of here."
That's an appropriate response.
This left Bronsberg alone in the theater, scratching his head and wondering what to do next. So, he eventually crossed paths with a man named Herbert Nitke, who had financed 1973's The Devil in Miss Jones. And what that movie is a pornographic film that got a wide release coming out after Deep Throat, which, as we all know, was the first porno movie that had a widespread distribution.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Bronsberg knew that Miss Jones was a huge success, so he trusted Nitke. With few options left, he sold Nitke the rights to the film. But to avoid associations with his other company that produced the porno film, The Devil and Miss Jones, Nitke formed an entity called Lodi Distributing, specifically for Flesh For Frankenstein. Unfortunately, Nitke bowed out as the film's distributor, but chose to retain a 50% interest in all the proceeds, or the revenue, or whatever the film. Mm-hmm. He tied that up with the new distributor he had secured, Bryanston Pictures. And here's where it gets, morally ambiguous, I guess? Bryanston Pictures was owned and run by Joseph and Louis Pereno. And these were the sons of Anthony Pereno, a member of the Colombo crime family, aka the youngest of the 5 families that dominated organized crime activities in New York City within the criminal organization known as the American Mafia.
Oh, that's extremely chill.
The 70s, what a wild time.
I don't know how Nitke got involved with them, but they actually distributed Deep Throat, so that's how they had that connection.
Right.
So
Okay.
I have to assume that when he was doing Devil and Miss Jones, he probably reached out to them to be like, "Hey, how did you make Deep Throat a huge success?"
Mm-hmm. Ooh, okay. So this was just like something that not even like the pornographers and the exploitation people wanted to touch, like at the time.
These guys did. So they created Bryanston Pictures for Deep Throat because that was the way that they could get the Mafia involved in the filmmaking industry. Like that was why they did this.
Yeah.
But they did want to make regular movies, not just porno. So they bought the distribution rights to Flesh For Frankenstein for $750,000. And I looked them up, y'all. There's a whole slew of films in the 1970s that they produced, and that would include Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Whoa.
And John Carpenter's debut film, Dark Star.
Whoa, hold on. So like they wanted to use Flesh For Frankenstein, if I'm understanding correctly, as their platform into like regular movies.
Yeah.
Like not porno.
But it fucking worked.
I guess that's putting it lightly that it worked.
Well,
damn.
It's just, Texas Chainsaw I kind of get, Dark Star I do get, because that just looks like a cheapy film. But yeah, this film is so much more graphic than any of those other films that we're talking. Besides Deep Throat, obviously.
Yeah.
But, like, still.
Right, but let's not forget that this film comes out a year after Last Tango in Paris, which admittedly that movie doesn't have any kind of like innard fucking, but it does have that X rating and it has that kind of art house European vibe to it. So like the masses were more ready between Last Tango in Paris and Deep Throat to watch something like Flesh For Frankenstein.
Apparently, too, I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because that whole gallbladder line, that is meant to spoof a line in Last Tango in Paris because Morrissey hated that film.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You know what? This is like turning even more into like one of my favorite movies ever now.
Right? It's like a big fuck you.
This is great. This is all so fascinating because like, yeah, you really think at the time that this movie came out, this really was the movie that like people would fear movies would become, like sexually graphic, violently graphic, just like
perverse. Yeah.
This was the perfect storm brewing right here.
100%. So while Bronsberg was lucky enough to get them on as a distributor, he wasn't crazy about their distribution model. And because what they did was they would rent the theater, screen the movie, and take all of the box office. So like, oops. Yeah, the theaters didn't make any money off of this. Everything went right to Bryanston Pictures because they had Mafia money, so they could afford to just buy out the theater.
Got it.
There was also, however, because this was in 3D, there was an added expense that required the cinemas to put in a silver screen because the amount of light necessary on the screen for a 3D film was not adequate with the normal screens that were in theaters at the time. This fell on the theaters that would have to spend anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 per cinema to get a silver screen to show this movie.
Oh my god! In 1970s money, absolutely not.
For
this
movie,
Yes.
like not even like a big like sci-fi movie or anything. Like for Flesh for Frankenstein, like.
Well, okay. Do y'all think this movie was successful, but money-wise?
Probably not. God, no.
I think maybe, but based on sheer notoriety.
Okay, so let's go into this. In West Germany and the United States, the film was released as Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, not Flesh for Frankenstein, though only the title Frankenstein appeared on the print itself. It was presented in the Space Vision 3D process in premiere engagements. It was released in West Germany on November 30th, 1973, and was later shown on April 2nd, 1974 at FilmX, the Los Angeles International Film Exposition. It then got a wide-ish cinema release in May of 1974 when it opened at the Translux West Cinemas in New York. It got an X rating by the MPAA due to its explicit sexuality and violence, but it still managed to earn $4.7 million in rentals in North America.
What?
That is shocking.
Stop! You're lying. I don't
lying.
believe that.
I'm not lying. By 1974, the Los Angeles Times stated that the film had grossed $7 million, and by 1976, over $20 million.
My mind is blown.
So here's the lesson, kids. Always go along with the Mafia because they know a winner.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, though, like, I mean, these are all in the extra features of this movie, and some, like, journals that I had found. It's not on Box Office Mojo, and again, I'm like, well, I wonder if it's because of the distribution model, where it's, like, it's private, because, like, the theaters weren't reporting any numbers because the Mafia...
they made no money?
Yeah.
It was all, like, money laundering and everything.
Yeah.
Basically.
So, film historian Stephen Thrower claims that he thinks that the film's huge success was largely due to the 3D, because it hadn't been done in so many years. But, unfortunately, since Blood for Dracula was not filmed in 3D, that was the one that was not successful. That was actually considered a major financial disappointment.
Wow, that is insane to think about. That, like, I guess, yeah, like, really at the time, people would be like, oh, 3D, like, let's go watch this, and then... That's,
I mean, at the time, as though we didn't all do that about 5 to 7 years ago.
Yeah, 2009 for Avatar.
Uh-huh.
No, but like, I mean, what? We have guts going in 3D in this movie, which is hilarious. So it's like the closest thing we have to this now is like My Bloody Valentine 3D and Piranha 3D, right?
I definitely thought of Friday the 13th Part 3. It's like, ooh, look at the stick. Ooh.
They really don't do like horror in 3D anymore.
Well, actually, Reyna, that's not entirely true because we did just cover Nurse 3D a couple of weeks ago, and the 3D in that is shit.
Okay, but like that's also very campy.
Oh, I never said it was good.
No, it's good, but like it's not good, but it is good.
I feel like 3D is like a very good concept, but like over the years, like film production history has like proved time and time again that like it just overcomplicates the production.
Oh, for sure.
That's because people call 3D a gimmick, right? Like that's what it is. And I think that the times we see it the best, and I know we joked about Avatar, but it's like James Cameron is using 3D as an immersive option.
Yes.
It's not a gimmick in his films. And so I think that's honestly, if we want to see more 3D films get made, that's what it needs to be. Unless, again, we're doing like schlocky B horror movies, and when you are using it as a gimmick, but like you're embracing that gimmick with a hug.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed.
So, Flesh for Frankenstein opens to mixed reviews. The Hollywood Reporter praised Morrissey's direction, stating that the 3D technology required to shoot the film helped create a more controlled look than Morrissey had achieved in earlier Warhol films. But the Los Angeles Times review denounced the film's ironic detachment as chilling and forlorn, whereas Newsweek lauded the film's intellectual send-up of mainstream audiences' increasing desire for violence and sex.
Okay, so somebody got it.
Yes. So Bryanston Pictures, again, the Mafia, they condemned the Los Angeles Times because the newspaper refused to publish critics' quotes on the film's advertisements due to its X rating. Bryanston Vice President and COO Ted Zefro accused the paper of blatantly censoring public information and stated that the Los Angeles Times had defended their policy by explaining that some pornographic filmmakers had invented critics' quotes to use in their advertisements.
Okay, well...
I mean, it's kind of like sometimes that happens today, right? Where like they'll pull just words or phrases from your review and combine them to make it sound like a good quote.
Yes, like I think I did like a negative reaction to a movie once, and then somebody pulled it because I put like "It's a miracle this even happened," and it's like,
a miracle.
Yeah, somebody's like, "Oh, they're gonna pull that and put it's a miracle."
Yeah, or like it's not the best movie ever made, and they pull the best movie ever made.
Yeah, it's all optics. That's really all it is.
Selective reading.
Yeah.
Zefro did fight back, though. He mentioned positive reviews from Playboy, Newsweek, and New York as some of the credible sources for quotes that he would like to see in the advertisements of the film. But I unfortunately couldn't find out if he won, like if he got them to add this in. But nevertheless. More recently, in 2012, Time Out polled authors, directors, actors, and critics who had worked in the horror genre on their top horror films. And Flesh for Frankenstein placed at number 98 of those 100 films.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
On Rotten Tomatoes, we're looking at an 86% with an average score of 7 out of 10, and Letterboxd users have given it a score of 6.6 out of 10.
Boo.
Here's the thing. I believe that this film is very easily misunderstood. Like, if you go into it thinking, I'm going to watch a horror film that's based on the Frankenstein story, you're probably going to be disappointed. Like, you have to go into this anticipating ridiculous camp.
It's a comedy.
It is a comedy. It's almost more a comedy than it is even close to a horror film.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, even the violence is hilarious. Like, come on.
God, the
like,
violence is so
the first decapitation scene, I just, like, the first time I saw it, I had to pause and go, like, collect myself.
I mean, I know that's jumping ahead a bit, but, like, okay, I died. Not at the decapitation, but after the head is severed, and then Otto just, like, whacks the headless body with his bat.
With the blackjack just, like, beats it down.
Well, because you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation whenever Darla whacks that girl in the street. Don't hit me!
It really does. It really does have the energy of a Ren and Stimpy episode.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. But I will say, I've only seen this and Blood for Dracula once. I think Blood for Dracula is a better movie, but I think this is a more fun movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blood for Dracula takes itself a little bit too serious at times.
That's your more classic definition of camp, because it's intentional, but it also seems like it's not fully intentional.
Mm-hmm. Whereas this one just seems like, oh, let's do a full camp send-up of Frankenstein.
Right, exactly.
Basically. Yeah, I mean, when I was deciding which of the two we should try to program for this camp block, initially I was going to go for Blood for Dracula. If only also, you know, Reyna, like you said, we haven't really covered a ton of Dracula films. And all of the reviews that I read was like, oh, Flesh for Frankenstein is both gayer and also funnier and therefore more campy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I mean, John, I've talked to you about this, and Rain, I know you know about this, but there's definitely a sexual assault component to that movie that I think we need to give our listeners a bit of a break.
Yeah.
What, you don't want to talk about sexual assault every fucking week? Come on.
The Dracula one has some intense moments, whereas the Frankenstein one is like... The Frankenstein one is one that I'll put on with a group of friends and just have a blast with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could do that with Dracula, too. You just might have to be a bit more cautious about who you're showing it to.
Yeah, I gotta screen my friends first.
Yeah, yes, vet them.
I mean, you should be doing that anyway, because really.
Yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, so that's what I've got. I went through that faster than I expected, so yay!
Jesus, what a fucking production history on this. Like, my God. Like,
I wasn't expecting it at all, because I was thinking, oh, this is going to be one of those films that you just can't find anything on. Nope.
That's crazy. That might explain why for the longest time this thing, like, did not have, like, a great, like, home video release.
Well, so apparently Morrissey was constantly asking for astronomical prices to license this film out. So I don't know what Vinegar Syndrome did. Again, thank you, Vinegar Syndrome, because your 4K set is very thorough and awesome. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if they wore him down or if he just finally said, fuck it.
Well, because two companies, ironically, wore him down the same year Like,
Right?
because
Yeah.
Blood for Dracula by Severin got released, which is like, I don't know what happened if he had a change of heart, but like randomly this movie went from being like randomly super out of print for the longest time. I think the last time it even got an American release was the Criterion DVDs,
Right.
which were like single digit Criterion numbers. Like that's how early in the collection they are. To like randomly getting like, oh yeah, no, here's a 4K release where it has 2 different 3D versions. It's loaded with special features. Like when it happened, I was like, damn, this is like a miracle this even happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm happy it exists. I mean, it's the thing, Joe told me to buy this last year, this fucking set. And I was like, it's $50 for this movie I've never seen. I've never heard of it. Fuck you, Joe. I'm not buying it.
Fair enough.
But I did. But honestly, it's a thing where I just need to listen to Joe more often because honestly, I it's almost like an artifact. Like this is a very nicely done set. I'm sorry, we're not even sponsored by Vinegar Syndrome, y'all. It's just a really nice set.
But also Vinegar Syndrome if you're out there.
Sponsor us, please. Send us more movies, actually, because we did pay for this.
It really is like one of the best sets they've put out, I think.
It's beautiful. Even just the fucking cover art is stunningly gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the outer box? Good lord.
Especially when you know what it's referencing.
Oh, it's so great. Like,
but yeah. Okay, well, why don't we start talking about what happens in this film because it hits the ground running with the incest.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
what an opener.
So we open in a lab on a pair of children, Monica, played by Nicoletta Elmi, as well as Eric. Go ahead.
Reyna, do you recognize the little girl who plays Monica?
No, can you?
So have you seen Lamberto Bava's Demons?
Yes, I own it.
She is the usher lady that doesn't speak the entire time, that just stares at everyone creepily.
Swear.
Mm-hmm. She looks exactly the same, only grown up. It's uncanny.
I'm going to watch Demons later tonight now and look for her.
Oh, nice.
She's there.
Love Demons.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Italian production.
So Monica is there with Eric, her presumably twin brother, who is played by Marco Leofredi. And basically they are playing dolls, but it's in a very gruesome fashion. Like the credits begin/end with them decapitating a doll.
Yep. It's actually, I have to wonder if Barry Sonnenfeld stole that for Addams Family Values.
You almost would think, right? Because this would be like the era of film that would like influence him the most, probably.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And that movie is plenty campy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. And knows its horror history as well.
Very much so.
And it's literally a brother and sister with a guillotine.
We actually covered that movie.
There we go. So... later, they are riding in a pony-driven cart across the castle grounds with their mother, Baroness Katrin Frankenstein, played by Monique Van Voren.
My favorite part of this movie.
She is hilarious.
I want to steal all of her lines. I mean, like, should we drive by some peasants and she just goes, such trash.
She definitely delivers the camp category.
Oh, yes.
100%. So among these peasants that she drives by, and then she catches groundskeeper employee Nicholas having a bit of a romp in a tent, and Nicholas is played by Joe D'Alessandro, who apparently was a huge fucking deal in the early 70s. Like, we're talking massive sex symbol.
Yeah. He does have an interview in this 4K set, and I didn't really include a lot of it in my production because it's just, it's just how one actor came aboard. But he was just, he was in the factory, and basically Morrissey was like, hey, we want to put you in our movies. And he did, and he was even in one. It was one of Morrissey's, I think it was 1968's Flesh, in which he plays a gigolo. But I think there's a queer component to it as well. I think he actually has sex with men in the movie.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
So some of the comments that I'm going to make are informed by the audio commentary on this disc, which is from film historians and authors Sam Deegan, Heather Drain, and Kat Ellinger. And yeah, they kind of fall over themselves talking about this guy, Joe, because apparently he was just such a big fucking deal, but also it's really noticeable that we get so much male full frontal nudity in this film, because apparently Morrissey was like one of the only directors who was doing that in this time period. It was extremely taboo.
Which is bizarre, because when you figure out, like, when you like hear about how conservative he is, like the fact he was doing this.
I will say, admittedly, I was a bit underwhelmed with the full frontal male nudity here. Only because, I mean, they're all far away shots. None of them are really that up close, except, we get kind of like a flash of dickhead in the brothel scene, or the bordello scene. But the other two instances of full frontal male nudity, it's, Nicholas walking into a bedroom, and then we see it from far away, and then we see, the creature's penis, again, from, like, the view of the window up above. I was a little disappointed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I cannot believe you were saying that about the scene where he walks into the bedroom with Katrine. Like, that is literally, like, a moment of strutting. I mean, sure, it's not erect or anything, but in, like, a mainstream film?
Look, these people made Deep Throat and that Devil and Miss Jones movie or whatever the fuck.
Listen, they said, oh, this movie's going to be in 3D. We got to hold back on the penis for this one.
Right.
Well, but you know what, though? Look where we are today, right? Have y'all started The Boys season 3 yet?
I haven't even started that series.
Oh, well, there's literally a scene where a guy shrinks down and crawls inside his boyfriend's urethra to pleasure him and go to his prostate. But then he sneezes and embiggens himself while he's inside his boyfriend's dick and blows him apart.
I have to watch this show now. I'm going to add it to my
kind
list.
of show. Yeah.
I'm surprised you haven't, Reyna. It sounds like it'd be right up your alley.
I know, like, I saw the Blu-ray of it at, like, a record store, and I was like, oh, no, wait, this series sounds cool.
There you go. Anyway, sorry, continue. Penises.
Yeah, so clearly Nicholas is being set up as a bit of a Lothario character when Katrine comes across him, but we have no idea who any of these characters are or what the fuck is going on in this movie just yet, so it's very much like, is he important? Will he come back? We don't know.
Yeah.
So we go inside Castle Frankenstein, and we are introduced to the Baron, who is played by the one and only Udo Kier.
By the way, so he is very attractive.
In this movie, yes, very.
Yeah, not as much in Dracula because he's got that slick back Dracula hair. But look, I had to Google some pictures of young Udo Kier. Holy shit! Oh my god, he is a very attractive young man.
And he's got like that cool long hair in this movie. Like, I just love his look in this movie.
And I don't even like long hair, but it's long, but not long. But it's good.
Well, it's just weird because, okay, so we've only touched on him once when we covered Blade last year, and obviously that's Udo Kier at a very different time and place in his career, but you can still see the intensity in all of his performances, but here matched with that, like, youthful vitality, it's a lot of charisma for this movie. Like, he is very well cast as this kind of dynamic, questionable researcher.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he is gay too, right?
He is.
Yes.
Yeah, gay man. Joe, I know you'll want to do this, Joe, but everyone plug, if you want to see a recent Udo Kier queer movie, please check out Swan Song. It's very, very, very good.
Mm-hmm. Not horror, but really good.
Not horror.
Apparently, he lives about 20 minutes from me.
Oh my god!
Wait, you mean we could have gotten him?
I just expect one day to run into him and be like, oh my god.
How weird. How weird would that be?
Just at the grocery store.
I love these movies so much, like Flesh and Blood for Dracula in particular, that I'd probably damn near faint.
You need to keep them on your person at all times so that if you ever do come across him, he can sign them for you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, ma'am, I'd just like to let my dog take a shit in this park. No, you need to sign my Blood for Frankenstein.
No, you need to sign my gallbladder.
Oh my god. Yeah, fuck my gallbladder. Make me feel alive.
Actually, Reyna, you are right. His Wikipedia, he moved to Palm Springs, California in 1991.
Mm-hmm. Been there since.
God.
Okay, so we're introduced to Frankenstein, and basically it's while he's bitching out his manservant Otto, who is played by Arno Jürgen, and basically we're getting some kind of scary genocidal kind of shit where he's talking about the supremacy of the Serbian people and how they need to abduct a town person so that they can complete their experiment.
Because he really wants the finest nasum.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Anybody
I had
look
to
that
Google. It's Latin for nose.
Oh, okay.
I know, right? I just assumed it's meant the head because he's going for heads, but maybe there's something about like Serbians having a certain type of nose?
Maybe.
That's where you get the weird stuff in this movie that you're like,
Oh, man. I mean, trust me, though, when I was trying to Google some of this, I came across a Serbian film many, many times.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no. No.
Like, no, Google. That is a different movie. I really don't want that one.
I like that movie, but oh my God, like, no.
No. No. No.
So Frankenstein runs into this woman and the two children outside, and we quickly deduce that they are husband and wife with the kids. And she is like, hey, are we going to hang out? And he is like, nope, I got to go to the lab. I got work to do. So they agree they will meet at dinner later on.
We also, because this is the beginning of showing how the Baroness she wants things and then immediately gets bored, or she's like unsatisfied with them because she's like, oh, the school we sent the kids to is terrible. And he's like, bitch, you chose the school.
So the family is like the most interesting aspect of this like Frankenstein adaptation to me, because obviously the most famous adaptation of Frankenstein, like the 1930s Universal film, the whole point is that like, oh, he's going to get married, and here he's like married with kids, and they're like all extremely like unhappy
and totally fucked up.
I mean, yeah, they're brother and sister. But that also goes, I mean, because when he's talking about, it's not master race, I guess. We have this, well, actually, no, it kind of is. Trying to make a master race of Serbians.
Yeah, it's eugenics, yeah.
Well, but that's, I mean, because isn't that why, at least in like some monarchies, like, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they would all be incestual because they wanted to maintain the bloodline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's blood purity bullshit.
Yeah, you would have to be like part of royal blood to be considered in contention for like the crown.
Yeah.
So it's weird because it's like it takes like that Frankenstein concept and like spins it on his head in like two like very horrifying ways. Like one, it's like deconstruction of like nuclear family, and two, the whole royal blood or like incestual like keep everything pure type of reading.
Well, honestly, okay. We're adapting, quote unquote, Frankenstein here, right? I have to assume, was it public domain by this point? Because this is, I mean, we have all the names. There are parts that are there, but this is not a very faithful adaptation of Frankenstein.
No.
I think it was probably public domain at this point, and like you could just do whatever with the name.
Maybe. But I love that, again, out of all the plots he could have come up with for Frankenstein, this is what we got.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I just checked it. It is public domain because the novel was published in 1818, and public domain is usually about 100 years
100
later.
years, yeah.
Yeah, so the only thing that isn't public domain with Frankenstein, right, is like the Jack Pierce makeup.
Right, but that will be public domain in like 10 years.
Yeah.
Give it time, and then we'll get Killer Frankenstein meets Winnie the Pooh, and we'll all be having a lot of fun.
You know what I'm waiting for is Gone with the Wind, but like revenge. Revenge of the Slaves or something.
Oh boy. Okay, so husband and wife go their separate ways, and we go into this honestly stunning set of the laboratory. It is massive, it's huge, it's so interestingly decorated and laid out and staged. And there they have a pair of male and female creatures. The male is kind of unimportant because he doesn't last long, but the female is there throughout the film. She is played by Dalila Di Lazzaro. She does not ever speak, but she does get a lot of credit from folks for doing a kind of like autopsy of Jane Doe performance where like she's always there and she has things to do, but it can't be showy because she's actually not very responsive.
I was actually, because, okay, I mean, like, spoiler alert, but, like, the male creature will speak later. So I was surprised that happened. And, but then when it happened, I was surprised that we don't get a speaking female creature in this movie. And I wonder why we don't have that.
It feels like the emphasis is on Nicholas and Sasha, the character that we've not yet talked about, but so much of the relationship seems to be about men in this movie.
Can I bring up like a quick little point that like this, for as cool as this lab looks, it looks like a high school locker room.
Oh yeah.
Also that, yeah.
Like it's got tile everywhere and it's like laid out weird. It's very much laid out for like wide shots and like the objects are there for the 3D. Like you can definitely tell.
It looks like they retrofit a large swimming pool or something, and then they were just like, cool, take out one side of it and we'll shoot here.
Like it's got like a very aquatic feel to it. Like
does.
whether it be a shower room or a pool, it's like I just want to go to the bathroom in that lab.
Just pop a squat and take a shit.
Maybe not that graphically, but yeah, sure.
It's Flesh For Frankenstein. Yes, it would be that graphic.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah,
and then it would be
you're
thrust
right.
at the camera in 3D.
Now look at me. I'm becoming some part of that crowd that's like, oh, I'm mortified of this.
We're going to be doing like, what is it? Coprophilia? Coprophilia where you eat shit?
Oh my
Ew.
god. Moving on.
That's Serbian film influence on trays.
Well, I mean,
Here we
unfortunately,
go.
we did not cover Pink Flamingos last week, but we almost did.
We're all the better for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the next scene is basically just Katrin telling the children, like, don't pay attention to any of the rumors that you're hearing. And this is where we realize, oh, okay, everyone knows that they are the product of incest and they are fucking weird and people have taken notice of it. So I kind of love that the film doesn't try to dance around it very much.
And they're like the only wealthy people in this area, it seems like, right? Like, it's that castle and then there's a village.
Yeah.
Seems like it. Yeah.
It's a monopoly.
There we go. So in a long take, we get a dinner sequence, and the camera just kind of slowly tracks back and forth as they disagree about how best to move forward with the children not going to this fancy school anymore.
I love this to the point where I got mad when there was a cut.
Right?
You got that Morrissey long take right there.
Yep. He's like, here you go. This is what you're paying me for.
Well, I love the framing of it because he could have just stayed at like an extreme long shot, and instead he cuts it so that you're hearing snippets of the conversation, but you can't see the person delivering the dialogue. And I'm just like, oh, visually that's really interesting because I want him to move the camera, and then he does, but he does it very slowly. And it's very satisfying.
Yeah, it's interesting when you especially remember that they're using 3D cameras. So you're still getting like all this camera movement. Like he's still not afraid to play around with it with a camera that I assume is like gargantuan at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like Morrissey just didn't like that camera.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think any filmmaker likes 3D cameras except James Cameron.
And maybe William Castle too, right? He loves a gimmick.
Yeah.
Oh, he was all gimmicks. Godfather of gimmicks.
But not the Godfather, because he didn't have money in this movie.
No. This movie was Godfather and gimmicks.
There we go.
Hey, no, I'm kidding.
Hey.
Well, because did either one of you watch the 3D cut of this movie?
I tried watching the red and blue one.
I've had it really bad.
Yeah, no. I turned it off 20 minutes in.
Okay. I mean, I honestly, I only want to see Olga's death in 3D. I'll just like fast forward to that scene later and just watch it.
You know what I almost did? I almost like when this set came out and I heard like not only did they have the anaglyph 3D, but they had like the proper like digital 3D as well. I almost bought a PlayStation VR headset just to watch it like that.
Oh, you know what? I have that. I never use it because it takes like 20 minutes to plug in the fucker, but maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, maybe try that instead of the red and blue, because that didn't look great.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll go spend the 20 minutes. Bye, y'all. I'm going to go plug in this headset.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk to you in a bit. So we leave the castle behind for a little bit so that we can go to a field where we see Nicholas, the guy that Katrin saw fucking the woman earlier. He is there with his friend Sasha, who is played by Sergeant Zalonovic. And it's interesting, on the audio commentary, the various film historians and critics, they talk about how several people in this film were cast because Morrissey thought that they had very pleasing faces. And I'm not going to say that Surgeon is not a great actor, but he does have a pretty face.
He does. This character, I almost think it's like asexual representation.
Yeah, a lot of people have interpreted this character as either asexual or, like, traditionally gay.
Oh, I could see that. Okay, I see that.
Okay, that's an interesting read, because I don't think I caught on any of those.
Well, I mean, because he doesn't seem interested in sex, period. So that's where I get the asexual from. But I could see where you could make the argument where he's gay, because we only see him be disinterested in women. We don't really get an opportunity to see if he would or would not be interested in a man.
Right. Well, it's tricky, too, because the closest scene where you could infer some kind of sexual interest is in the brothel sequence, and it's more the way that Morrissey is shooting Nicholas's butt. But because of match on action, we infer that it is Sasha looking at the butt.
Right. I actually got more of a queer read from Otto.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, okay, because I'll wait till we get there. Because there is one scene specifically where I'm like, I think he's pretty gay.
Yeah, bookmark that.
Yeah.
Well, and the Renfield character has often felt that way, and he feels like the Renfield character to Dr. Frankenstein in this movie.
Yeah,
right.
It feels less like the Igor type character in this one, and more like a Renfield of like it has a more human element to the role rather than just your typical hunchback assistant does anything for Dr. Frankenstein, no questions asked.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he loves him.
Well, interestingly enough, Arno Jürgen, the actor who plays Otto, was apparently in competition with Udo Kier for the role and deeply resented the fact that he was not successful. So they apparently used the tension between them to great effect on film to increase the sort of stakes, the dramatic stakes between the two characters.
Right.
It is a very good on-screen duo, I will admit.
Yeah. Okay, so Nicholas is basically like, hey, Sasha, don't become a monk. Have you ever tried getting your dick wet? Come with me to the village. We'll go to the brothel.
Yeah.
So we get a little bit of 3D organ action in the lab. Almost all of the stuff about what do we want to do with this master race? You're just like, nobody cares. Just show us the really fancy, gory prosthetics.
I was confused by this though, because these are the lungs that we will see later that he's holding for him, right?
I believe so, yeah.
The Baron says, "Oh, the seminal vesicles are too long." And seminal vesicles are part of the penis. So I was really confused why he was saying that these lungs were seminal vesicles.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Paul Morrissey didn't really care about being medically accurate for this film.
So that's so funny because I just interpreted it as, Frankenstein is kind of a shit doctor. He's not Dr. Frankenstein. He's
all
Baron Frankenstein.
Morrissey also might be kind of a shit screenwriter. Who's to say?
It's all of the above.
Yeah. So at this point, Katrine is out for a picnic with the children. She stumbles on Nicholas having sex again. So she's basically like, you know what? You need to come to the castle tomorrow. I'm going to punish you. But secretly, she's like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I want to fuck you.
But not before yelling at this woman, "Get out of here, you filthy whore."
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very sexist. She only seems to care about men. And if women catch her eye in any capacity, it's basically like, you're a whore, get out of here.
Which could tie into the man monster talks and the female one doesn't. That could just be this world that they live in.
Right. Women don't have any voices unless they're high-end aristocrats who are also incesty.
Yeah.
In a weird way. This movie has a lot to say,
Yeah. So much.
You're reaching.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're
there is a
reaching.
class critique to be made in this film for sure. Like, that's where all of the satire comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's weird, because like you see like the notes of it too, and then you watch Blood for Dracula, and that's like all class satire and critique.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I wonder if the like the seeds of that were planted in Flesh for Frankenstein.
Yeah, probably so. Well, I mean, also because Morrissey was so focused on the camera in this one, he didn't have to worry about that in Blood for Dracula.
Yeah, whereas
Right.
yeah, like you said, it's just like a standard film. Okay, let's pump out this screenplay. Let's say what we really want to say here. Whereas this
Right.
one, obviously, troubled production.
Yeah.
Also, they were like on a schedule. If I recall, they had to hurry up and finish this so that they could even do Blood for Dracula.
Yes, but they had no issues meeting that deadline. Like, again, this movie was done in time, on budget. Like, it was, all things considered, this was not a troubled production, except for the fact that Morrissey hated the 3D.
Yeah. So that probably did occupy a lot of his time away from the screenplay.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. No. Okay, so we're back in the lab, and we've got more of this, like, here's what I want to do, my grand plan. The plot is kind of incidental in this movie, so it's not a huge deal, but basically, Frankenstein and Otto decide we're going to go to the brothel. That's where we're going to find our perfect specimen. It should be noted that both of the children are eavesdropping on this conversation as Frankenstein talks about, like, yeah, I went to a brothel once. I didn't really like it. The women were too sexual and their boobs were too big.
I mean, we got some tiggle bitties in this movie. But at the risk of being like, is it necessary? Like, why are the kids in this movie?
I do think it probably is of like, oh, every Frankenstein adaptation before this, he's at the end of the day trying to get married and trying to start a family. And this is like, no, here's a Frankenstein that's like miserable in his family.
Okay.
They're like a nuclear family, but they're not perfect. I think it's more of like a light satire of like traditional Frankenstein status quo.
Oh, I actually even like it as again, like in Female Trouble last week, we're talking about like the rejecting of the normal traditional family, and in this one we have a quote unquote normal traditional family.
Yep.
Minus the incest, and no one's happy.
Yeah, they're all miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think also, I mean, I think if we jump back briefly to the class critique, it's rich people stick to their own social circles, they intermarry, they end up with these like bastard children, and the movie gets a big laugh, I think, at the end of the film when it's saying, oh, okay, well, these kids are even worse than their parents were, and look at how demonic they are. It's also coming, you know, in the early 70s when we had a lot of like bad kid movies in the 50s and 60s too.
Wow.
Okay, so let's go to the bordello. I do feel like Morrissey is going the extra mile to make sure that we get a lot of nudity in 3D, particularly with these sex workers. It's interesting.
Udo Kier's his line delivery of all these overdeveloped women and their large breasts.
The line delivery is so good.
It's so good.
Yeah, so we should also note that human sexuality is not treated in a conventional fashion in this film. So, like, all the sex that we will see is very unorthodox. I don't even want to say that it's fetish or kink, because I think the purpose is to get a laugh out of us. So, like, instead of seeing traditional sex, what we see is Nicholas getting his knees licked. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
The licking will be prominent even once he gets to the Baroness, and the Foley work on these licking sounds.
It's so wet,
Oh my
so moist.
god. Gross.
Yeah, I've been always like, ever since I saw this, like fully convinced that the sex is not there to be sexy.
No.
The sex is there for like added shock value to make you go, oh my god, that man's knees are getting licked. What the hell? Or to just, like Joe said, to get a laugh.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous then that this movie ends up getting an X rating in part because of its sexuality and nudity. And you're just like, who the fuck is getting turned on by this? I mean, I joked about the peen earlier and it was appreciated, but at the end of the day, do I think this movie is sexy? Well,
Absolutely not.
No, look, we all know why this movie has an X rating, and it is 100% the fisting scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get there.
Wait, not sexy, but
Not sexy. No.
Hilarious, but not sexy.
Yeah.
My God. just upsetting. So the sexy fun stops when the sex workers discover a gecko, and in the ensuing chaos, Frankenstein and Otto confuse Nicholas, who is the Lothario they really should be after, and they instead fixate on Sasha as this perfect specimen, so they say, okay, there's our guy, we're gonna get him later.
The dramatic irony here, right? Like, I love... Because we, the audience, know y'all are going after a celibate monk, or soon-to-be monk.
Yes.
So when Frankenstein's like, 2 girls, 1 man, he must be very powerful. It is hilarious. Just waiting for this other shoe to drop.
Yeah, because that sex worker could not get anything out of Sasha. Like, he could not be less interested in her, to the point where I thought she was just gonna up and be like, all right, I'm out. I can't do anything with this guy. Okay, so basically what follows is the Baron and Otto end up knocking Nicholas out, and then they cut off Sasha's head with a giant 3D pair of scissors.
This, I mean...
If you're not
Great
into
moment.
this movie by this point, I feel like it's not a movie for you. This scene sold this movie for me.
This movie, this scene in particular, is the scene where I was like, I am all in on this, 100%. Because the way it happens, he just like runs up with like the giant pair of like, they look like gardening shears first and foremost.
Yeah.
Well, and we get the 3D too, because he shoves them right at that camera.
Yes, yes. So you got the gimmicky 3D, you got the comedic, him just running up and just chopping the head off, and then the way the body reacts.
I mean, again, when Otto just like hits him with that fucking club.
Yeah, because like it's like the end of Friday the 13th. Like the body's still moving and all this blood is squirting out in real time, and
the severed head looks really good too.
it does. And
okay.
I think it does.
The way the eyes look on the severed head, it's I actually think it's a little creepy looking, but like yeah, I like it.
I think the blood looks really bad.
Oh, that's that like giallo paint blood though.
Yeah, it's like red paint. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what we did in the 70s.
So you got the body there just dancing around and blood spewing out, and then Otto just pulls out like a bat and just starts clubbing the body down. And you're like, what in the hell is going on here? But I agree that this is like the point in the movie where like, if you do not find this like hilarious, like this movie might not be for you.
Well, I think though, because I don't know. I mean, because Joe, you said like some of the reviews, like people didn't think it was funny or they weren't picking up on the humor. And I think that's always something interesting with something that, I don't know, like, because again, I guess I could see how maybe you could watch this and be like, oh, it's not trying to be funny, it's just bad, and that's why it's funny. But I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of this is very clearly trying to be humorous, and so I'm a little worried about the people that watch this and don't pick up on the humor.
Yeah, it seemed that there were 2 types of reviews that were critiquing the humor. It was either people who were taking the film at face value and saying, this is a badly done horror film, the comedy is getting in the way, or people who would say, well, there is a joke in there, but it's just one joke over and over again. And I would vehemently disagree with both of those claims.
Yeah, I would too.
I think part of what people might struggle with the film is that the humor is deadpan. Like, the movie doesn't treat anything as funny. It knows it's funny, and it lets the audience figure that out. So, like, it took me until this scene to realize, oh, this movie is really going for comedy. Like, it's going for laughs.
No, yeah, because honestly, before this, the only time where I was like, okay, this is hilarious, it is honestly all those Baroness lines, but that's maybe just I'm going after this bitchy female.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, there's still like some subtle lines. But yeah, the way this is just presented, like, I want to say we're probably about a third of the way through this movie at this point, but like, oh, God bless this scene.
Yeah, and it won't get any less weird from here. So it's like, oh, if I like this, then I'm in for a good ride to come.
Yeah, that's putting it real lightly that it's like not going to get any weirder.
I mean, the last 10 minutes of this movie, y'all.
Yeah, it's certainly something.
Okay, so we get like absolutely triumphant music on the soundtrack as the Baron and Otto prep Sasha's head and put it onto this male. They always call them zombies in this film, so they're not creatures.
I wonder, because maybe it's because I don't know, Night of the Living Dead was super popular 5 years before, so they're like, oh, let's call them that.
I mean, they were trying to do Living Dead, so zombies do technically work. It's just, it feels weird in a Frankenstein film to hear the word zombie.
Yeah.
So Nicholas ends up arriving at the castle. He has woken up from being knocked out. His friend is dead. He actually did technically wake up in the morning, and he saw that Sasha was decapitated, and he just like dragged the body away. And I spontaneously started laughing that he not only is just like, I guess my friend is dead, but then shows up at the castle like, oh, well, I had to come because my employer said I needed to be here. But he does take a moment to explain to the Baroness, like, oh, yeah, so I just buried my friend on the side of the road.
No, okay, I wrote this line down. Nonchalantly, he says, well, somebody hit me in the back of the head, dragged my friend into the bushes, and cut off his head.
Yep.
Like, oh, that's a common occurrence.
It's like, moving on.
And part of, I think, the reason why this ended up working so well for me is because I think D'Alessandro is such a bad actor. Like, he can't sell sincerity, but this line he's trying to be, but it's such a ridiculous thing to say given the circumstances that it just made it doubly funny. It's like it circled back on itself and became even funnier.
It'll be fun when you do finally, because Joe, you haven't seen Blood for Dracula yet, right?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
Oh.
He plays the rapist hero in the movie.
Oh, God.
Yeah. That's
What more could be said from that statement?
Yeah. Well, it's like, I don't even know how to elaborate on that. Like,
nope.
good God.
That is just what it is.
Yeah. Problematic elements in that movie, but the energy is there. I will say that.
I like that movie a lot, but yeah, yeah.
So after he makes this confession, Nicholas and the Baroness immediately fuck. Of course, we also have the kids watching, so these kids are demonstrably pervy. That's all great. Afterwards, she says, okay, I'm going to hire you to be the dinner server so that you can stop, fucking women out in the fields and you can just be in here fucking me all the time. She also encourages him to use the modern plumbing every day. To which I'm like, is that just a commentary that she thinks he's hot, but that he smells like shit?
Well, okay, wait, the modern plumbing, so does that mean he can use a chamber pot instead of a wooden bucket?
Oh, am I just misreading the sexual euphemism? And she's like, the modern plumbing is in like your dick in my vag.
Oh, maybe. I literally thought it was like, oh, you get to use a metal pot instead of a wooden bucket.
Why not both?
Yeah, let's do both. Let's say it's both.
Yeah.
But also, like, you got Frankenstein's lab that's literally like a bathroom, so, maybe
This is
it's
true.
modern
Reyna's
plumbing.
already said she would definitely go number 2 in there, so...
That's the big takeaway from this episode.
And that's the subtitle for this episode. Reyna goes number 2.
Okay, so we cut to Frankenstein. He's out fondling organs. He is fucking this female zombie, and Otto is just staring at him absolutely wide-eyed. This scene, it is wild.
So this is the scene where I was like, I think Otto's in love with Baron von Frankenstein because... he's doing the thing where he's like rubbing the sweat off of his brow or whatever. But if you watch, because the thing is, when you're watching this, you're watching Frankenstein because you're watching him look at this body and wondering what he's about to do with it.
Right.
But if you look at Otto, he is looking at Frankenstein with such, it's not even passion, but it's like adoration, where he looks like he is in love with this man, and that's where I got my queer read from Otto.
I could see it.
I don't know.
I mean, I think Otto is an inherently queer figure. He seems to lack any idea about what sex is. So I took this as he's studying Frankenstein to see like, oh, when you shove your hand into someone and play with their internal organs, that's what sex is. And that's why he ends up trying to replicate this with Olga later in the film.
Right.
Interesting. I've never really thought of it like that.
I mean, again, I'm just like, the film doesn't do anything with it. It's really just this one scene. Because, like, yeah, like you said, he'll go after Olga later. But still.
I feel like that's the problem with this movie. Like, oh, like, here's a serious critique. No, it's just like a general issue with this movie is it, like, unlike Blood for Dracula, it presents a lot of these broad ideas, but it doesn't do anything with any of them.
Yeah, because we got to move on to the next shocking set piece.
Exactly. The 3D camera.
Yeah, it definitely seems content to just kind of say, like, here's a weird thing. What do you want to do with this? Do you want to unpack this? Oh, yeah. Now we got to move on to a shocking organ desecration scene.
I mean, look.
Yeah. Huh.
I mean,
Go on.
I don't know. I knew the way that this scene was described in the Wikipedia plot summary was like he uses the wounds for sexual pleasure. So in my mind, I was like, okay, he's gonna fuck a wound. Which this isn't the first time that we've seen something like this, Joe. Because in our very first year, we covered Auto Up with Dead People, which does feature a zombie fucking a hole in the side of a corpse. But this is 1973, not 2008, and this is upsetting and hilarious.
Yeah. We'll see how you fare with the same ideas when it is treated deadly serious, Trace. Maybe when we hop over to Reyna's show sometime, either in the future or past, depending on when that episode drops.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll bring the heat for that one.
Well, speaking of heat, your fun fact for this scene is that apparently the lighting in this particular set was very hot. You can actually see Udo Kier is visibly sweating in this sequence, and those were real animal body parts. Like, they were using sheep, I think you said earlier, Trace. So they apparently stunk really fucking bad, and under the hot lights, it was extra awful. So Udo Kier was trying not to gag the entire scene, and Morrissey was just like, do it better, do it faster.
So, okay, we've kind of been describing this scene, but Joe, for anyone who has not watched this movie, please just tell them exactly what is happening in this scene.
Okay, so they've got the female zombie creature on this kind of table, but it can be manipulated so it's vertical or horizontal. So they manipulate it so it's horizontal. Frankenstein kind of climbs on top of her. She has a suture wound down her abdomen that he ends up sticking his hand into. But it also appears like he is fucking her traditionally because she is nude. So you get the sense that he is penetrating her in two different ways.
It's
very metaphorical.
And of course, this woman doesn't speak. She doesn't have a name. Like, we don't know who she is. So it's very much like, I mean, I think one of the critiques that you could make about this film is that the sex is antiseptic, but it's also very transactional. So, like, even though Frankenstein is trying to get off, he actually seems more excited by, like, this isn't a person to him. This isn't traditional sex. This is, like, science. Like, he's getting off on touching his science experiment.
Should we offer a content warning at the in the show notes for this? Because, I mean, I know it's a corpse, but, like, would we still consider this sexual assault?
I mean, I think it's very disturbing.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd say throw the content warning on.
Yeah, I'll do it just in case. I'm just thinking about that director of The Sadness who made that joke about how corpses can't give consent, and then the audience revolted against him.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you want to hear that story, head on over to the Patreon episode on The Sadness, because we got some extra deets.
Yeah.
Oh my! I still need to watch that movie.
That's fun. Well, it's good. Maybe not fun.
It's worth a watch.
I heard that's not a fun movie.
Reyna, I think you're going to think it's fun.
Okay. I'm twisted enough.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, so of course this is also where we get the iconic line to which this film is best known. To know death, Otto, you have to fuck life in the gallbladder.
Yeah, so I don't know what line from Last Tango in Paris this is specifically spoofing, but yeah, as I said, Morrissey hated that movie, and that's why he put this line in this movie.
Fair enough.
Huh.
I mean, it
Never
is
knew
hella
that.
memorable.
Yeah.
It's like the line from this movie. Like,
I didn't know that walking in, and so as soon as it happened, I messaged Joe and was like, this fucking gallbladder line, and he was like, that is the line.
oh yeah, that's the line everybody quotes, like when this movie is like shown anywhere.
Yeah, it's just not something you hear every day.
It's such a funny scene, like the way it plays out, like, and now I'm picturing Udo Kier like trying not to gag the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a vile movie. Get it out of my sight. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
It's just like, it like adds an element of like, oh, it's kind of funny because he was a little bit miserable behind set, but they're also working with animal corpses, so they probably deserved it.
Part of me is like, ugh, Morrissey should have capitalized that on that. He should have been like, oh, I'm going to take a page from William Castle. I'll just release this scene in Smell-O-Vision.
Oh, good God. Could you imagine?
Oh my God.
Just like a scratch and sniff. What?
I do like that reading you had where like he doesn't view her as a person. Like it's just like he views it as just like his work, his like pile of like body parts just like lying there. But like he's so dedicated to his work that he's like almost getting off on it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting too when you contrast it to the way his sister approaches sex, right? Which is very much, as Trey suggested, it's similarly transactional, but she gets bored with everything so quickly. So she wants the fresh new thing. It's almost hilarious how quickly she's willing to dispose of things as long as there's something else that she can fuck later.
But that's your commentary, right, in your class critique.
Yes.
Because it's not even just, oh, she's bored with it. It's also, oh, she realized that what she wants, she doesn't really want. Because that is literally how she dies. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, too, when she was saying tighter, I was like, bitch, no!
Yeah. We all know where that scene is going, and
Exactly.
that also makes it funny, ?
Oh, it's hilarious.
This whole movie is like, you're all like, it's hilarious, and you're all like, I don't know if I should be laughing at this.
Yes.
But again, that's where we're getting in. I mean, again, an extension of the conversations we've been having for the past several weeks. These exercises in poor taste, where it's like, ooh, we are laughing at very horrendous acts. And it's funny because again, we've done 2 films from the 70s. Nurse 3D, I think, it's not really quite on par in terms of bad taste, even though it may be bad quality.
Yes.
But it's fascinating to me because, again, you can't have something like this made today.
Oh, God,
No.
At least not
absolutely
widely
not.
released. You know, this would be some kind of black market video nasty, like...
It'd be a trauma film.
Yes, it would be a trauma. Thank you, Reyna.
I mean, I'm also trying to think of just like, you know, how quick film Twitter is to get angry at something and just pile on it. And I mean, like, sure, we can say this is fine because it's 1973. We didn't know any better. But it's like, you know, I would love to see something made today that has this kind of energy and content.
Which is interesting because this movie like is beloved now. Like when this box set got announced that it was getting released, people lost their minds.
Yeah, so excited. I think in part, though, because of what you were talking about earlier, Reyna, where the film had such a legacy, but no one could actually see it for themselves. So the opportunity to finally see what had been perceived as a lost classic was very exciting to people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a brief scene where Katrine tells the Baron that Nicholas is going to be working in the castle, and he's like, who? What are we talking about? I don't care.
She doesn't care because she just wants a good dicking.
Exactly. Yeah, like, she's not even asking for his permission. She's just like, you're going to see a man walking around the castle a little bit more often. And then we, of course, get the obligatory... This is the most, like, Frankenstein-y scene in this movie where they zap the zombies and... Head. Yeah, so this made me uncomfortable given the eugenics vibe of this movie, where he basically says, like, raise your arm to show your functionality. And I was like, this looks like a Hitler youth thing.
And a little bit. That might have been intentional, too. I mean, again, how can you get more in poor taste than making fun of the Holocaust?
Yeah.
I think maybe not, though, because this got released in West Germany. So, like, and they would have cracked down on that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this could just be my, like, sensitivity sensors going into overload, but I was like, oh, we're raising one arm. It doesn't look great, but yeah.
But, I mean, look, we're 80 years past the end of World War II, and we still associate that motion with, like, Third Reich. And so I find it hard to believe that, no, well, maybe they're on drugs. They didn't care.
It's art.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we get a second dinner sequence, and this one is even more fun than the first one because we have the addition of our 2 zombies, and of course, because Nicholas is also serving the dinner, he notes that the one dude kind of looks like his friend Sasha, albeit taller. Mm-hmm. No? No laughs at the taller crack? Okay.
No.
Because they make a specific comment that he's like, oh, well, that can't be Sasha because Sasha wasn't that tall. And it's like, wait, so Dr. Frankenstein made Sasha taller by adding his head to this body?
Yeah, that's what he did.
But the actor is still the same.
Oh, right. Oh.
See,
Oh
I'm so in the movie by this point that I was like, well, yeah, of course he's taller. Like, he's on a different body, not knowing in my head, oh, wait, that's the same actor. How the fuck is he taller?
They gave him platform shoes, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, no.
That's great. I did not even think about that.
I'm
just like, yeah, of course his head's on a different body.
Yeah. I thought in my head that his head was on a different body for some reason when I'm like, wait, this is a movie. That can't happen.
Oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
It's like Sarah Jessica Parker having her head put onto the body of a little chihuahua in Mars Attacks. Oh, wait, they didn't actually do that to Sarah Jessica Parker?
I mean, look, I think that's obvious. You can't put a human head on a dog body.
Oh, really?
Well,
in the future, you can.
Listen,
Martians can.
Get Udo Kier on the case. We'll find
Right.
out. Flesh for Frankenstein 2 coming soon.
Oh,
He doesn't know if it has anything to do with like testicles or lungs, but he will definitely be on the case of getting a woman's head onto a dog's body.
Ooh, also though, we should cover that movie.
I do love Mars Attacks.
I love Mars Attacks. Scared the crap out of me as a kid, but I love it.
So the dinner scene, I can understand why people have read Sasha as asexual. For me, this is where the queer sort of undertones really come in, because he and Nicholas are making, hey, is that you? But also kind of fuck eyes at each other.
Gotcha. Now I kind of get that reading.
I mean, I think the more simplistic reading is very much like, oh, you look familiar. Are you the person I think you are? How could that be? You shouldn't be here kind of deal.
Because that's what I was getting. Because I get almost nothing queer from this movie. But now that it's being brought up, for some reason I'm just like, I don't pick up on any of those vibes on this movie. I don't know why.
I mean, I think that's interesting. Not to say that any film that has a gay actor as the lead has to be queer, but I find that surprising since we do have Udo Kier playing the lead in this movie.
Yeah, but he's played very straight passing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I almost read him as more asexual aside from the sex scene, but in my reading of that scene, it's not even sex. It's a weird. Yeah.
What's necrophilia?
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, guys. He's putting the organ in the body. Let's all calm down. No, I'm kidding. nothing else is happening there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Katrin is not impressed because she definitely saw that Nicholas was eyeing up Sasha at this dinner table. So he notes that he thinks the resemblance is uncanny, and she's like, "Cool, let me tell you where the fucking lab is." Because she's like, "All I want is your dick. If this will get you to stop talking, I'll tell you how to find the lab."
Okay, no, but I love it. So when he tells her, "Oh yeah, that's my friend," she goes, "Oh, see, you did just have a nightmare, silly. You didn't actually have a decapitated friend."
Mm-hmm.
I just love how they're still kind of on the oh, my friend was decapitated, and it's not a bigger deal than it is.
Right?
Yeah.
No big reactions in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, nevertheless, though, if Katrine saw a peasant get decapitated right in front of her eyes, she wouldn't care because it's someone who's beneath her.
Yeah,
right.
She'd applaud it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make a joke oh, well, that's one less person I guess I'll be able to fuck now. But she probably wouldn't care unless they were of equal stature.
I mean, I'm surprised she's fucking up someone of Nicholas's stature.
I mean, have you seen him in that hair?
No.
Look at the actor.
No, I'm aware, but again, given how really against the lower class she is, I'm surprised she would even have that as an option for herself.
This movie forgets the rules of its own characters. It's wait, what?
Well, and I think, as you said earlier, Trace, like, these are the only rich people around as far as we know. So maybe she doesn't have any other options.
She's got to take like a 2-hour carriage ride to the next village.
Yeah, like the only other rich guy is Dracula, and he's like one castle over.
She just shows up. Oh, shit, you look like my brother.
Do y'all get any... again, I don't have a lot of experience with Hammer horror, but do y'all get any Hammer horror vibes from this movie?
Yes and no. I think the way it's color corrected for sure looks like Hammer horror. And I think just by extension, the European look of everything.
Right.
I find her styling, like her hair and even sometimes the way she's lit, yeah, it does remind me of the Vampire Lovers. But again, I think it could just be like kind of what Reyna said. It's like it all has that vaguely European look to me.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like this movie almost feels like a send up of those, because all those like Hammer vampire like films and Frankenstein ones are all about like class and sexual liberation and the dismantling of the nuclear family. Only this one's a little bit more on the nose, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
It's
not quiet. The Nazem.
Nazem.
Exactly.
Finally, we have the perfect Nazem.
God. What do we make of the scene, this extended 3D scene with the kids in the lab and they're hiding in those bats and that kind of stuff?
It's bad.
Yeah, why? I don't know why this is here.
To make the movie longer, I think.
I mean, it's 95 minutes.
That's brief, though, right? Like, maybe
that's a very brief movie.
Yeah.
Because, like,
it's just watching them swat away bats for 2 minutes.
Well, they probably, like, saw, like, how long the movie was, like, and then they're like, we spent all this money on these cameras. You better get more footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you give us something scarier where someone's actually being attacked by something in 3D?
So we put children in danger of rabies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rabies is scary.
Yeah, characters that nobody cares about, but rabies.
Yeah.
But it definitely does feel like almost like a pickup shoot of like, oh shit, we need like a little bit more footage.
Yeah. Get that girl's hair back into color and dye so that we can get the red back and then throw them into a cellar.
Oh my god.
The scene is bad.
It's bad. It just serves no purpose. There's no narrative purpose here or anything. Again, if the gimmick had been done well here, like, I would maybe feel differently, but it's just boring.
I feel like the movie would be like stronger if this and like a few other parts were taken out and it was made like a little bit tighter.
Ooh, 82 minutes, ma'am. 82 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a perfect length for this.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if that's part of what led to the criticisms, like it only has one joke and it plays it out.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably. Yeah, the length. Because that's the main criticism I hear from this. I hear that, like, obviously Blood for Dracula has, like, a little more nuance. It's got more to chew on in themes. I think it might have a shorter runtime. Don't quote me on that. But overall, it just feels more brisk. Whereas this is around the same length, and people are like, oh, there are just moments in that movie where it just drags.
Yeah. I'll confess I did feel that way the 2 times that I watched it. There were a couple of parts where I was like, there's just nothing as shocking or entertaining happening as other parts of the film, and it almost felt like, oh, I'm coming down from the high right now. One of those moments was not watching Katrine slurp on Nicholas's armpits in this sex scene, though. That was a high.
I'm sorry. Right before this, though, we have the scene where, like, Otto goes to the Baron Frankenstein. He's like, oh, yeah, Nicholas looks familiar, but, like, Baron doesn't recognize him. And he just goes, he's like, well, he looks familiar. Well, why shouldn't he? They all look the same, except my Serbian.
He's a bad doctor.
But yes, this I mean, again, not to bring back fucking female trouble, but, like, the sound effects as she's licking every part of him, it is just why camp.
It's good Foley.
Oh god, I mean, the Foley artist who was in charge of getting these sounds, by the way. Oh,
right.
They should have interviewed the Foley artist for the special features.
There you go. Oh no, okay, nobody wants to hear it on a podcast, Trace. Now you have to edit at least 10 seconds of that out.
It's an audio medium.
No.
That needs to probably be edited out or bleeped.
Well, that's what it sounds like.
Gross. Okay, so then we have Otto attacking Olga, who is the maid who we've not really talked about because she's not really a character, but I would say this is probably the best pairing of comedy and horror in the film because Otto's reaction to Olga is ridiculous. He cannot keep his tongue in his mouth because he thinks that that's what sex is, but then he disembowels her and we get to see her like intestines and chest cavity dripping out through a grate.
As my father would say, Otto with that tongue is every woman's wet dream.
I'm sure.
I wish this was video so you could see how big my eyes got. Like, wait, what?
Your dad told you this? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Whenever I was watching Scream for the first time and Matthew Lillard's tongue comes out, he goes, "Trace, look at that. That tongue, every woman's wet dream."
Oh, my Lord.
And I believe we've said this joke before.
I've 100% made that joke before. But little did he know that it's also every man's wet dream. Or gay man's wet dream.
Okay, so we'll transition away from there.
My dad's a really nice guy, y'all, I promise.
On a watch list, too.
Crying. I'm like crying laughing at that reaction.
This disemboweling through the grate. This is my favorite use of the 3D, by the way. Like her liver and whatever falling through the grate. I was just like, that is what this is. Because honestly, too, what you see in these modern films, the horror films that do this, like be it Nurse 3D or Drive Angry or Piranha or The Final Destination or Final Destination 5, it's all CGI gore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that we're getting this practical, like real life organ falling at the camera, that is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Always practical gore.
Yeah, and the organs themselves look great, right? Like, sure, we have to contend with the 70s red blood, but I think in this situation, it matches perfectly with the tone, like this kind of garish, lurid, over-the-top vibe that the movie is going for. And this shot in particular is just so memorable. Like, it is scary, it's campy, it's weird. Like, Olga's not a character, so we don't really care the fact that she's dead, but it cements itself in our minds, right?
Well, so I think because so the actors that played this Olga couldn't speak English, so they had to get rid of any of the lines she had in the script. She apparently did come back later, like a while after filming was completed for additional photography to quote unquote conclude her character's arc. And so I have to believe that this death scene wasn't in the original shoot.
Oh. Again, runtime, padding it out a little bit, and maybe
shots
to make it more visceral.
Well, because do we even have? Is there anything after this that even acknowledges that Olga is dead?
No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. Is like, because honestly, when I watched it, I was kind of like, wait, why is this happening? I mean, again, fine with it because of what happens, but I was kind of like, why is this here? I don't. It just feels very out of place in the sense that, like, we've never seen Otto really interact with Olga before, or he's never shown any interest in her until this scene.
Right.
So
I read it a little bit as him mimicking, not Dr. Frankenstein, but yeah, I could definitely see that as just sort of, hey, can we get another murder in there? Can we get another 3D effect in there?
Well, because honestly, again, you take this out, we still have a scene of him trying to emulate Dr. Frankenstein later when he kills the female creature by accident.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It does feel like a pickup shot though, like.
Right.
Again, fine because of this money shot. I'm totally fine with it. I mean, I feel like this was added later.
It's like one of those reshoots where it's like literally goes one or two ways. You either get the kid scene or you get this. Like,
and they gave us both.
Quality. Yeah, they're like, said, just put both in, pat it out.
Why not both?
Olga and children and Otto, please come back. We have more for you to do. Kids, swat away the bats. Olga, die.
Yeah, basically.
That, you know what? They might talk about that in that interview with her on the Blu-ray.
They probably do.
Yeah, I bet you wish you watched it now, eh?
Oh, yes. God damn it.
Okay. So our next scene is watching the Baron try to make these zombies kiss. So mostly because he wants to see if they're going to be able to procreate and create his master race. But every time the female zombie kisses the Sasha zombie, he doesn't get hard.
Yes. Oh my God. This is hilarious. It's like, kiss, 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 kiss. And then you just have Otto constantly like just checking his dick every time. Hit him, his meaning Sasha's, to make sure it's hard. And it just never gets hard. And also the children are watching.
Of course the children are watching.
Yeah, this is where a lot of the bad taste comes in that you were talking about this week.
It's so funny that we have to watch as Otto peels back this kind of like loincloth diaper. Yeah, and you know, he's peering down. You're not really seeing penis, like you see it briefly when he covers it back up, but this whole sequence is so ridiculous, and it goes on for so long. Like it started to get repetitive, and I thought, okay, we all get it. It's not working. And then it got funny again because it was going on for too long.
No, right? No, and that to me is the best kind of funny, when you're like, oh, this is going forever. But then they do one more thing, and then it just makes it funny again somehow. Oh, it's so good.
It's like it comes back around on the joke itself.
Yes.
Well, because it's the rule of threes, right? You should have three, but then this just keeps fucking going, and it's like, all right.
It honestly feels like it's 2 minutes long of just kiss. Look. Nope. Kiss.
I'd have to go back and look, but I wonder how many of it is the same shot and like a cut of dialogue that they just repeatedly use.
Something tells me that it might not be, because you got that like
It's the long
trademark.
take.
Yeah, the Morrissey long take.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so this is not working, and Dr. Frankenstein, I keep calling him Doctor. He's not. He's a
It's fine.
Baron
Frankenstein is very frustrated with this. He does not understand where he has gone wrong. So, this is where we get the scene where Nicholas Nicholas has also observed this, and he's very perturbed. So he goes to Katrine. He wakes her up in the middle of the day, but she has been napping, and they have an argument where she ends up calling him a farmer, and he slaps her.
This is your line that you started the episode off with, though. That how dare you wake me up in the middle of the day when you know I have insomnia? Since when has the lower class been allowed to be so presumptuous?
It comes out of nowhere. We don't even know what time of day it is because there are virtually no exterior shots in the back half of this movie. So we're just like, oh, I guess it is day. Wait, she's never mentioned insomnia before. She's so indignant. Why are they so angry? Okay,
It's fantastic. Like, honestly, I just want to start telling people that. Like, even if they're not waking me up, I'm just going to yell at them, how dare you wake me up?
Ari comes in. He's like, hey, can you walk the dogs? How dare you wake me up?
In the middle of the day when you know I have insomnia. I will say, though, that him slapping her and calling her a bitch was quite cathartic. I really enjoyed that.
I mean, she's being patently ridiculous, but so is he. Like, they're both absolutely flying off the handle at this point, and it's very amusing to watch.
Well, unfortunately, this does kind of sign his death warrant.
Yeah. So, basically, she ends up throwing Nicholas under the bus when her husband/brother comes to ask her about why the experiment didn't work, and she's like, blame Nicholas. He disturbed your experiment. He messed up your equipment, so on. So while this is happening, Nicholas is sneaking into the lab, and he tries to reason with Sasha by letting him loose, but it doesn't work. So this is when the Baron comes back in and sees what's happening, and Nicholas gets knocked out because Sasha will obey the orders of his master. Yep. So, because she is now done with Nicholas, because he is a farmer and he slapped her, she then calls dibs on Sasha, even though we have no reason to assume that the equipment below the waist works. She's like, cool, just bring him to my room. And I do love her line when she says she'll bring him back intact, but not unspoiled.
Again, though, her line about Nicholas, she's like, I'm glad we got rid of that lowlife. And Baron Frankenstein's like, well, you were happy with him at first, just like you were happy with the kids, the school we put the kids in. And she goes, I learned my lesson, but not really.
Not really. No.
But yes, then we get this sex death scene.
Oh boy.
This scene.
It's so good. Yeah, so Katrine brings Sasha back into her room and she says that she will give him instructions on how to please her. And it works initially, but then she starts to lose her patience and she basically instructs him to squeeze her. And then he squeezes her too tight and won't stop.
I put my notes in all caps. Guess she didn't learn her lesson.
Wow.
Because you hear these, again, Foley guy, good job. You hear her bones crack as he squeezes her.
Yeah, this is the end of the Baroness, unfortunately. She is honestly probably the most delightful character in this movie. She's just so wackadoodle.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just bitchery personified.
So, while this is all going on, we have Otto back in the lab. He strings up Nicholas, and then he tongues and then rips open the female creature, similar, as you said earlier, Trace, to what he did to Olga. And so begins the... It's almost Hannibal-esque in its, like, construction, where we end up with a kind of pyramid tableau of dead bodies in the lab.
I mean... This denouement of this film, this final 10 minutes, I mean, it's bonkers. This just one thing after the other. It gets more and more ridiculous. The tonguing of this wound is just so gross. I do hate that we don't see, like, we know what happens. Like, you know, he disembowels her and, like, shit, her guts fall out. But I kind of hate that we don't have good coverage of that shot.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's like an exploitation film, but of the male variety at this point of the movie. Like they tricked you by having the brothel scene to like fully committing to the movie, and then they're like, okay, hope you enjoyed that because you ain't gonna get much more of it.
Yeah.
Oh, you came here for conventional sex? Sorry, all we have are people pulling other people's innards out.
Exactly, precisely. It's like they knew. I feel like they knew.
Yeah.
Like how can you not? I think it's pretty obvious. It's like, oh, by the end of it, everything you think you know about like the conventional, like quote unquote sex is going to be like flipped on its head.
I mean, there is a lot of fetishes and kinks that are present in this film. A lot of taboo fetishes and kinks that are present in this film.
Yeah, like armpits.
Oh my god.
Yeah. See, it's funny because earlier I said there's really no conventional sex in this, but I guess, yeah, all the licking is pretty kink.
I mean, we almost get bestiality with that gecko earlier.
Oh my god. Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we've got the female creature who's dead on the ground. When the Baron comes in, he sees what Otto has done. He gets so mad, he ends up strangling Otto to death. So now we have 2 dead bodies on the pile.
Yep.
And then in comes Sasha carrying Katrine's body. So we add that to the corpse pile. So now we're up to 3.
You know what it reminds me of is Clue.
Oh, God.
We just cut and like we throwing all the bodies on the couch in that room in the study.
Basically.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that Baron pleads with Sasha to kill Nicholas, this is when Sasha will no longer be controlled, so he goes after the Baron. We get this great shot where he advances on him and then slams his hand, amputating it in a door.
This looks
Such a great shot.
Yeah. This is awesome. The blood still looks like shit, but who cares? It is gushing out of this arm wound.
It is gnarly.
Yeah, it's great. But it's not the end.
It's not the end. I actually thought, okay, well, that's going to be the end of the Baron. He's going to bleed to death, and then the movie's over. And then, no, Udo Kier's got to get a really fantastic death scene. So he comes out, he's, going on, and then we get the spear. I think it's supposed to be through the heart, but the exit wound is at the stomach level. But
yes.
He has punctured his heart in perfect 3D at the camera.
It is. I was like, that's very much still a heart that's at the end of this spear. But, okay, how long do you think he monologues for before he finally dies?
Like 3 hours.
Right? I messaged Joe and I was like, he is still monologuing.
Still going. Still got it.
Yeah. He goes on for a minute before he dies. It's like almost like over the top theater where like you almost expect him after to just go like, ugh, and then keel over.
This, I don't even know what he's saying in this scene because I couldn't stop laughing when I was watching it.
My God. It's funny, right? Because if this had been treated at all seriously, I think this could have been Shakespearean levels of kind of pathos and tragedy. Like, it almost reminds me of the end of Titus, like Titus Andronicus, right? Where we get the reveal that, you know, he was beating her kids, and then she kills him and he kills her, and everybody's just dying all over the place. And you're like, oh, this is really upsetting. Except here, because it's so ridiculous, we can't take any of it seriously. And that, again, just kind of makes it all the better, right? Like, this could be so tragic, watching this poor scientist who just wanted his master race, but instead we're like, I just kept looking at the swaying spear with the heart on it.
Okay. What bothered me the most, and by bothered I mean, like, again, I thought it was hilarious. He dies, and we have like we get a long shot of this room so we can see all the corpses. They're all laid out. He is somehow, as a corpse, still kneeling, and neither end of the spear is touching the ground, propping him up. He is just holding himself up.
I think in a weird way, it's almost like, oh, this man was all about eugenics, master race, but like his own creations are the things that killed him. And like, it's like a giant middle finger to like that ideology in a way.
Oh, for sure. I also love, Joe, that you're like, oh, this poor scientist just wanted his master race.
The framing of that.
But folks, we are not done. We still have one more body to add to this pile. So we're left with Sasha and Nicholas, which is meant to be the emotional core of this movie, right? The friendship between these two men. And Nicholas is like, let me down and we'll go. And Sasha says, well, there's nowhere for me left anymore. It's not like I can become a monk. I can't be a regular man anymore. And, you know, I could actually see this in a Universal film where the creature says, I don't exist. I deserve to be dead. And he just rips open the sutures and kills himself. I don't think that this is particularly funny. Like, I do think this moment is meant to be sad and emotional.
Yes, but what is funny is it's like, okay, but let your friend down first.
Yeah, Sasha really doesn't give two shits about Nicholas at this point, does he?
Well, because he asked him, he's like, oh, well, where are we going to go? And he's like, oh, we're going to leave and go to the village. And he's like, oh, no, sorry, I'm going to kill myself instead. It's like, okay, cool, do that, but maybe let me down first. That was funny to me.
Yeah, because sadly, Nicholas is still suspended. His feet are just above the ground, so he can't help himself. And of course, because we have forgotten that these two little fucking shits are still kicking around, enter Tweedledum and Tweedledee, and they will clearly inherit this lab and their father's predilection for violence and exploration. And the movie ends on I'm pretty sure it's not meant to be ambiguous that clearly Nicholas is going to be their first experiment and this dude is going to die, but we end on them just raising him up.
So that's what I thought. Because, the Wikipedia plot says, it is not clear if the scalpels are there in order to release him or to take over where their father left off. And I'm like,
come on.
Yeah. Because the opening of again, we're bookending the movie with these children. No, they're going to experiment on this man because now they have an actual subject instead of just a doll they have to decapitate.
Yeah, exactly. They have what their father had, which was a living doll.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's it. That's the movie.
Yeah. What an ending. Holy shit.
That is Flesh for Frankenstein / not Andy Warhol's Frankenstein.
There we go.
Reyna, please, first of all, thank you for coming back onto this and for watching this with us. Well, again, what are your final thoughts on this film?
It's just such a unique movie. And it's got some themes that are there if you really want to look into them. It's just one of those things where I just don't think a movie like this will ever happen again. It was like, right place, right time. Now you look back on it and you're like, holy shit, that movie exists and it's great. And I'm glad it exists.
I am too. I mean, again, as a first-time watch, I was pleasantly surprised by this. This was a hoot. This was very fun, and I would easily recommend this to someone. But probably just kind of give them some context for what they're getting into.
Yeah. It's not for the faint-hearted.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll co-sign on all of that. This was unexpected. Like, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's so absurd, and the humor is so deadpan, which is really appealing to me because you know Trace and
British,
Reyna, you may or may not know, but like a lot of North American humor doesn't really land for me. So this just kind of was pitched at the exactly right spot, and yeah, it's early Udo Kier. Everyone in this movie is fantastically beautiful. Like, the actors are all stunningly gorgeous, so it's a pleasure to watch in that sense. The colors are lurid and pop off the screen. Like, this film just feels very vibrant to me. And yeah, I mean, it makes me excited to check out Blood for Dracula, because if it's kind of more of the same with maybe a little bit more meat on the social satire bones, then I can really get into that.
A lot more meat.
Definitely more problematic elements in that film, but
which is
definitely
saying something.
I know,
is wild.
Exactly. I mean, again, if one of these films is going to get made today, this would be the one, not Blood for Dracula.
God,
no,
oh my God.
Blood for Dracula is like 1,000% of like, okay, Flesh for Frankenstein. You're like, oh, that's a fun, like, over the top movie, and then you look at Blood for Dracula, you're like, whoo, this would never happen.
But again, I feel like, though, that's more akin to Morrissey. Like, I feel like if you're going to say, oh, which one is more the embodiment of Morrissey's ideals or whatever, or like his talent and skills, it's going to be that one, because he wasn't worried about that 3D camera work.
Yeah, he didn't have the technical aspect to worry about it, and this one was on schedule. Like, they got everything done, but Blood for Dracula, that one was able to go over schedule, or they had extra time if they needed to. Like, I think they started production on like Blood for Dracula a week after they were done filming Flesh.
Yeah, I mean, because it came out the next year.
Yeah, and they had to shoot Flesh first, I think only because they had to cut Udo Kier's hair.
Yeah. Oh, Lord. Well, listeners, we hope that you enjoyed this little trip down Frankenstein Alley. This has been fun. But before we announce what we're covering next week, Reyna, let everyone know, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me at JFC Doomblade. I pretty much write for many websites. I always just post there. Recently made my big grand return to Bloody Disgusting.
Hey.
Shout out. I also run the Windsor Film Club. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. We are a podcast that focuses on underappreciated or downright weird cult films. We do have an episode with the Horror Queers. It was part of our Cronenberg month last month. We covered Crash, big fun movie. Definitely, like that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, that's a word for it.
Yeah, but please go check that out if you're interested.
Yes, please do. That was a first time viewing for me, so if you want to hear my reactions to that, definitely go listen to it. But yes, if you would like to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers, or you can shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. Go to our YouTube channel to check out our interviews with various horror filmmakers, as well as our monthly hangouts, where we talk about hot button issues with some of our journalistic peers. And if you want to chat with other listeners, go join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. We really, really, really appreciate reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That really helps us, rise up in the search results. And if you want even more Horror Queers content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you'll get all this and more. Episodes on horror movie to TV flip-floppers, an audio commentary on the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie to celebrate its 30th anniversary. And before we close out the month with an episode on Jordan Peele's Nope, we will also have themed episodes on Joe Cornish's Attack the Block and M. Night Shyamalan's Signs to tie into what is, hopefully, an alien theme in Nope. But Joe, we're continuing Camp Month next week, and we have a literal camp next week. So what are we discussing?
Yes, we are. We're actually going to close out both the month as well as this theme with a film that we have not covered for 4 years, and it is finally time to pull this trigger. So Trace, we are headed to Sleepaway Camp.
Yep, we are. A film that we have had endless requests for that we have just kept putting off. But But everyone, please join us next week for Sleepaway Camp and, finish out this camp month. And until then, we can cross out Flesh for Frankenstein.
Indeed, and cross out horror queers.
Atlas Avenue, a long stretch of road that encompasses everything the city of Kennett Heights has to offer. Neon lights, traffic, crime, the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and the craziest of characters. My office was above it all. My name is James Locke, and I'm a PI.
Hello, Mr. J. How the hell you doing today?
Good, Edith. Nearly every year I have a new case. New people to meet, new clues to discover, and new problems to solve. But I do it the old-fashioned way. No technology. Nothing post-1950. Hell, I don't even listen to podcasts, but you should. Atlas Avenue Beat is a spoof of the film noir genre with goofy characters, tons of wordplay, and non-stop raunchy humor. There's also 3 whole seasons out right now with more on the way. Just search for Atlas Avenue Beat wherever you listen to podcasts or visit us online at bloody.fm.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula.
Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.